Our history is no more than a series of incredible events. Each one of us can influence its course. From the birth of a 1,000-year empire to the end of a flourishing civilization. From the creative genius of a handful of men to a global cultural revolution. From the darkest totalitarian visions to the most terrifying great wars. From the heroic resistance of an entire people to the unbreakable will of a minority. The tiniest of our decisions can influence the future of mankind. To know the past is to anticipate the future. 1995, Los Angeles, South Central District. Outside, the crowd is screaming with excitement. Backstage, the musicians of the Black Power metal band head for the stage. In a few seconds, the greatest rock festival of all time will open. Censored, banned from the stage and the airwaves, rock spread in the ghettos of New York and Los Angeles during the 1970s. Long confined to underground concerts and basements, it is now the only means of expression for a black population that feels excluded from the American dream. Today, defying the authorities, it's emerging from the shadows. Hard rock and black punk bands will perform one after another for days in front of 1 million spectators. But none of this ever happened. At the beginning of the 1950s, Elvis Presley will walk into the Sun Records studio to cut his first record. Rock will go global. July 5th, 1954, Nashville, Tennessee. Elvis Presley steps through the door of the Sun Records studio. 10 years later, hundreds of hysterical fans are waiting excitedly. They're at the very first Beatles concert. November 19th, 1976, the Sex Pistols release Anarchy in the UK. The song is a truly anarchist manifesto. These three different but intimately connected events are the founding elements of the history of rock. Music is everywhere. We listen to it in the subway or when we're out jogging. It gathers us together for huge concerts, and sometimes it provides a helping hand. Today we can listen to what we want, when we want, and as we want. It wasn't always so. Our story begins in the United States at the beginning of the 1950s. It's the age of the blues, the Cold War, and segregation. The United States is living through a period that is very different from the one that we know. Black and white communities live apart from each other. The period is both rigid and turbulent. Political tension, Cold War, segregation, the struggle for equal civil rights. The whites are in a majority. They are in command of the country. The black communities are in a minority. One of their only means of expression, the blues, a music born in the cotton fields, and jazz. At first, they call it race music. Then the name evolved to become rhythm and blues, more politically correct. This music is represented by artists like B.B. King or Little Richard. Black artists playing for a black community. But music knows no boundaries, and very quickly whites will take an interest. Such is the case of Alan Freed. A radio DJ, he plays black music, notably the blues, but not only that. He broadcasts the first examples of a new genre. A music that doesn't yet have a name. Very quickly, they name it rock and roll. Rock and roll is at the crossroads between two separate worlds. Taking inspiration from both the blues and country, its roots are as black as they are white. The conservative Puritan world is horrified. For them, the radio presenter is trying to bring whites down to the level of blacks. Alan Freed will be subject to many threats. July 5th, 1954, Nashville, Tennessee. A young truck driver wants to give his mother a present. His name is Elvis Presley. This young man walks through the door of the Sun Record studio to record 2 songs. The session costs him $4, and he comes away with a record to give to his mother. Rock and roll is about to explode.
Welcome to the memory of humanity. Here we can control time, analyze and compare billions of events, and alter them to rewrite history endlessly. For example, just imagine that Elvis never went to Nashville on that July day in '54, that he never opened the door of the Sun Records studio. He would never have known what he had missed. This sort of opportunity, the result of chance and favorable circumstances, is so rare and surprising that we can never know if we have missed one. Elvis would have continued with his odd jobs and now and then singing for his mother or himself. The world would have had a different face. Rock would have not gone global, at least not so rapidly. Most importantly, it would almost certainly have exclusively remained within the domain of the black community, with whites preferring country music. Rock would have become the protest music of black Americans and would probably have been ghettoized. We can envisage a militant rock in support of the Black Panthers, electrifying the racial riots of the following decades. Rock would have taken the place of rap. Black communities would express themselves through hard rock.
Elvis is rock and roll. His voice, his music, his energy, his career. In a few years, Elvis turns it all upside down. No more ballroom dancing. It's now individual hit gyrating and provocative gestures. He is the principal agent in the popularization of rock among the white American general public. He will earn 48 gold discs in 1956 alone. During the course of his career, he will sell more than 700 million records and give more than 1,000 concerts. The first white man to associate sex appeal with the new form of music, he adds a more dynamic and more forceful sound. Very quickly, his highly sexual way of dancing will bring down the wrath of the conservatives. They try to get him banned, they burn his records in public, they cancel his concerts. The church condemns his music. Parents hate him. Kids love him. And in the 50s, kids become a real social group. With their high purchasing power, their opinions count. For a long, long time, the young have clashed with taboos related to sexuality and the American Puritan morality. For too long, they've been told to behave and follow their parents' model. In this prosperous post-war period, they need changes. They want to enjoy life before they get too old. For the American young, the hour of freedom has arrived.
No rock without a guitar. The history of rock cannot be disassociated from its flagship instrument, the guitar. A guitar is a string instrument consisting of a wooden soundbox and a soundboard. When the strings vibrate, they emit sounds. It's as simple as that. You still have to play. Johnny Cash used it like a rifle. Elvis made it sound like never before. Very quickly, it will evolve, and rock will evolve with it. At the end of the 50s, Leo Fender markets the first solid-body guitar, the Broadcaster. It's a single piece of solid wood with no soundbox. A cavity dug into the block holds one or several magnetic microphones. Connected by a cable to an amplifier, this new tool provides a totally new range of sound. The electric guitar becomes the symbol of rock. Liberated from acoustic constraints, it will take on the most diverse of shapes and even become a means of expression itself. Jimi Hendrix will go as far as to set his on fire at the end of one of his performances. As he will say, "You sacrifice the things you love, and I love my guitar."
Elvis breached the wall of Puritan society. Other artists flooded through it, like Jerry Lee Lewis or Chuck Berry. At the beginning of the 60s, rock has lost its initial vitality. It's behaving more orderly, more respectable, more marketable. Censorship and money have done their work. A few resistors like Johnny Cash continue to defy the established order with numbers like Ring of Fire. But even Elvis, who is now dubbed the King, is no longer the same. America is hoping to return to real values. No more rebel role models for the young. It's time for a well-behaved rock. Although born in the United States, it's in England that rock will find its second wind. In 1963, the Beatles hit the scene with She Loves You. The world will never be the same. It's a tidal wave. They're handsome, they're young, their tunes are gripping. It's the start of Beatlemania. Like many of the rock bands that followed, they came from the Liverpool working classes. Those popular districts are to become veritable forges of talent. Their album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, is considered to be one of the best rock albums of all time. Their influence will be decisive on the history of rock. In an 8-year career, they will record 13 albums, 200 songs, and sell more than 300 million albums, more than 2 billion to the present day. But for the Beatles, there's no provocation, no rebellion. That will be the role of the Rolling Stones. The Stones are not the Beatles. They will even do all they can to be seen as the exact opposite. Their image of bad boys brimming with arrogance, rebellion, and sexuality very quickly proves profitable. Parents hate the band, so the kids love it. The number Satisfaction is a revolution. A perfect synthesis of the blues, rhythm and blues, and rock. Between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, there's something for everyone. Rock begins to spread wide. It takes on a new dimension. As well as youth emancipation, the first political themes begin to emerge. They start to reject war, especially the Vietnam War. These are the first protest songs. At the Woodstock Music Festival on August 15, 1969, the genius Jimi Hendrix plays the American national anthem on an electric guitar. The incredible sound he manages to draw out of his guitar allows him to imitate the sounds of bombs. The message is clear.
bigger and bigger. In 1969, Woodstock is the festival of excess. At the time, there had never been such fervor for music. For 4 days, braving the rain and the mud, 450,000 people will attend the first great rock concert of all time. Nobody anticipated the size of the event. The infrastructure was vastly insufficient. The organizers are very quickly overwhelmed. There will be 3 deaths, 4 miscarriages, and 2 births. On the last day, only 30,000 are left to watch Jimi Hendrix's concert. Woodstock goes down into legend. Those who came will be able to say, "I was there." Years later, the monsters of rock in Moscow will pass Woodstock by a mile. 1.6 million people traveled to listen to Metallica and AC/DC. Rock craves excess. Heavier and heavier sound, ever more extravagant costumes, increasingly gigantic concerts. Let's count all the records sold around the world. The top 3, the only ones to have sold more than 1 billion copies, are by rock stars. The first is Elvis Presley.
Rock doesn't stop at borders. It pushes them wide open. The 70s demand renewal, yet again. The major bands of the 60s no longer exist or have become institutions. It's time for experiments, and they will go off in all directions. Pink Floyd, like Velvet Underground or the Stooges, claim they make art and not just rock. They're looking for new sounds, adding experimental instruments, developing new philosophies. Artists feel they need to move forward. Pink Floyd's progressive psychedelic rock offers a total, highly immersive spectacle. It's no longer a question of music, but of images and experience. We are a long way from Elvis's concerts, where the singer alone was enough to carry the show. In 1979, The Wall is a huge concert during which a wall is built, gradually blocking off the stage. At the end of the show, the wall collapses. At the other extreme of this creative explosion, rock gets harder. Returning to its blues roots, they add guitar distortion and aggressively loud vocals. It's the birth of hard rock. Queen, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and of course, AC/DC. Hard rock will itself give birth to heavy metal. Even heavier, more saturated. Bands like Kiss or Metallica will hurl themselves into the arena. As in the 50s and then the 60s, the rock of the 70s will also spark controversy.
To create is to dare. The rock movement is continually questioning itself. Artists are constantly seeking renewal, a race to innovation. Rock takes its inspiration from jazz, the blues, and country. Country itself is descended from traditional Irish songs. So there's some bagpipe DNA in every number by Elvis or Metallica. In the end, it soon becomes impossible to use the word rock without being simplistic. There isn't one rock, but a number of rocks. Where artistic creation is concerned, nothing is invented. Everything is inspired by something else. If we go far enough back up the family tree of rock, we can certainly connect it to Beethoven's compositions or classical literature. So there's a common point between a hard rock fan and a Renaissance poet. The history of art is an uninterrupted series of creations taking mutual inspiration one from another. Sometimes, cultural marriages can prove to be unexpected. In 1967, Andy Warhol, a great figure of modern art, decides to experiment with a new form of art and produces the first album by psychedelic band Velvet Underground. Pink Floyd had a similar attitude with painters like Pierre Soulages. Break the codes, dare to try new material, claim a truly artistic approach.
Out of the creative chaos of the 70s, punk is born. Oil crisis, massive strikes, unemployment, and inflation. The rise of the far right. The young, once again, have had enough. They experience daily life as a lead weight. For them, the future is a dead end and necessarily bleak. The watchword, no future. Punk denounces, criticizes, rejects. The reaction is brutal. The music is screamed. For the Sex Pistols, the scene is too tame, subjected to what they now call the rock industry. Opposed to the consumer society, they want pure music, reject studio arrangements, and prefer raw, live performances. The dirtier the music is, the more they consider it to be authentic. For the first time, the music counts for less than the message. Fashion codes fit the music. Mohican haircuts, black, ripped clothing, skulls, Bover boots, and fishnet stockings. On November 19, 1976, the release of Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols is a truly anarchist manifesto. The message? Anti-conformity and rejection of the established order. Politicians and churchmen rushed to the ramparts, yet again. Naturally, this is the best publicity the movement could have. Punk becomes increasingly popular, selling more and more records, more clothing. In the 1980s, the punk style is widely adopted by fashion houses, record companies, and the media, pushing cynicism to the limit. The success of punk dug the movement's own grave. Opposed to the consumer society, it is finally standardized, packaged, and sold in supermarkets. But the young need a rebel music. If one dies, another takes over. Today, rock has more faces than ever. Its influence has been spreading throughout the world for decades. What face will it have tomorrow? But that is another story.
When it emerges at the beginning of the 50s, rock immediately sparks a strong reaction of rejection for some and genuine fascination for others. To the powers that be, its amoral, subversive, and rebellious character constitutes a real threat. The sudden bursting upon the public stage of communities, until then kept apart, revives ancient fears. But it is also an innocent form of entertainment. The first rock musicians never seek to disturb public order. On the contrary, they want to be accepted. From the 60s, rock artists will gradually build a counterculture. But the more publicity the movements attract, the closer their affinity becomes with the model they criticize. Then, new voices are raised to scream their revolt against the system, louder and louder, until these early pioneers, in turn, are taken up by the consumer society. The rock audience then becomes a consumer of rebellion. Rock becomes an industry. You could think that rock allowed itself to be perverted by the very model it claimed to be fighting. You could see in it a sort of cynicism. You could believe that rock is dead. But that is to attribute too much intention to a music that, from the very first hip gyrating from Elvis to the guitar riffs of AC/DC, never claimed anything more than to please its audience, to provide a breath of fresh air. Some landmarks. Rock is a traditional escape valve for the young. It didn't put an end to wars. It didn't change the world. It just offered the right to be young and to stay that way.